strongest border ever. In recorded history, we had the best border. In fact, if they could ever put up a chart, I don't know if they can do it. Do you guys have access to that chart that I love so much? You don't mind if I go off teleprompter, do you? Because these teleprompters are so damn boring, I try and explain that. Oh, there's it. Wow. You guys are doing it. They're getting better with time. My guys, take a look at that chart. Take a look at the arrow on the bottom. See the big red arrow, right? So that's when I left office. That was the lowest point, and that comes right from the government services, comes right out of Border Patrol. Take a look at that. So that arrow is the lowest amount of illegal immigration ever in recorded history into our country. And then the worst president in the history of our country took over. And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit over that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that says,
I hope he's turning this way. Be careful, guys.
We got breaking news. We got breaking news coming in. Shots fired. Seems to be shots fired at the Trump rally. Is he okay? We need to go live right now. We don't know if President Trump has been shot. We know he hit the ground. We do not know if President Trump has been shot. He's up. He's up. Shots are still continuing to be fired. He's giving a thumbs up, everybody. He's giving a thumbs up.
I wouldn't even be doing this. I'd be at some beautiful place with a gorgeous ocean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down. You see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And still I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a senator.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look.
And it's
There he
not
is.
easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here. And it's much tougher than if it happened. We have the strongest border ever. In recorded history, we had the best border. In fact, if they could ever put up a chart, I don't know if they can do it. Do you guys have access to that chart that I love so much? You don't mind if I go off teleprompter, do you? Because these teleprompters are so damn boring, I try and explain that. Oh, there's it. Wow. You guys are doing it. They're getting better with time. My guys, take a look at that chart. Take a look at the arrow on the bottom. See the big red arrow, right? So that's when I left office. That was the lowest point, and that comes right from the government services, comes right out of Border Patrol. Take a look at that. So that arrow is the lowest.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're glad to have you here. There is so much happening in the news. We are not going to be able to cover it all in just 2 hours. Thankfully, we do have some incredible guests who will join us to give their commentary on the biggest news of the day. First up top, J.D. Vance is selected as the Republican Party's vice presidential candidate to serve on the ticket alongside Donald Trump. We're going to talk a little bit about his history, how he came to that position, became a U.S. Senator, and of course, eventually landed on the ticket with Donald Trump. We're also going to talk a little bit about the incident that occurred over the weekend in Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump was nearly assassinated by a shooter who managed to crawl up to a rooftop. 30 minutes in infamy. The local police apparently had seen the shooter with a rangefinder device at least 30 minutes before the shots rang out, and Donald Trump was almost killed. We're going to talk about that and we'll ask the question of who's responsible. At 7:30 a.m. Central Time, we're going to speak to Vance Gin. He served in the initial Trump administration in the Office of Management of Budget. He's going to talk to us a little bit about his thoughts on Vance Gin. So we've got Vance talking about Vance. Should be fun. We got Vance on the show today. Vance Gin and J.D. Vance talking about J.D. Vance. That'll be an interesting segment. You won't want to miss that at 7:30 a.m. Central Time today. At 8 o'clock, we're going to speak to Camilia Peterson. We haven't heard from her since the events happened this last weekend. She's going to catch us up on all of that, as well as the drama at the Republican National Convention. And then at 8:30 a.m. Central Time today, we'll hear from Angela McArdle, the chair of the Libertarian National Committee, on her thoughts on what went down and her thoughts as well on J.D. Vance from a libertarian perspective. So we'll hear from Angela at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. We're going to have an incredible lineup of guests. Do us a favor, click that like button. And if you end up enjoying the content today and it's your first time here, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. So make sure you click the follow button as well. 30 minutes that will live in infamy. A local law enforcement officer spotted a suspicious man carrying a rangefinder, I kid you not, in or just outside the venue before Donald Trump took the stage last Saturday night. The officer did report the sighting to the state police. He took a photo, and then there was a discussion about whether or not he was carrying a pair of binoculars to try and see the rally better. Turns out it was a rangefinder. A few minutes into Trump's remarks, then Thomas Matthew Crooks opened fire. And we know what happened next. He wounded the former president, killed a 50-year-old father of two, and wounded two more spectators before a Secret Service counter sniper neutralized the threat. Now, it's not immediately clear how long Crooks was on the roof, but sources say he was initially seen without the gun 30 minutes before the attack. State police did not respond to questions about this. Several witnesses have come forward in interviews claiming that they reported seeing an armed man before the shooting started. Bill Gage, an expert on active shooter response, said that just because someone is on a roof doesn't mean that the counter sniper guys can open fire. He says they operate under Graham versus Connor use of force rules. They would have to perceive a threat. Well, that's fascinating. They would have to perceive a threat. One would think that people shouting gun and the fact that he was holding a gun, and that not only did police see the guy with the rangefinder 30 minutes before, but it is confirmed that a police officer climbed up to the rooftop, saw the shooter, had a gun pointed at him, and then climbed back down. As a matter of fact, I was listening to Fox News this morning on Fox and Friends, and they were saying, well, people just think that it's a cop's job to be like a hero in an action movie, and it's totally understandable he had a gun pointed at him that you would retreat. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I did make the mistake of thinking that it was the police officer's job, not only to serve and protect the public, but also the person whose rally it is that you're there to protect. My bad. But then again, I wouldn't have made that mistake if I had remembered that, of course, the Supreme Court has ruled that police officers have no constitutional duty to protect people. So I guess it's my mistake for thinking that the police officer maybe should have tried a little bit of heroics, maybe should have gone back down the ladder, grabbed a gun. I don't know, just backed off a little bit, tried to get a shot from far away. What the hell is going on in the police and the federal and local police around this country? We have a crisis of competence going on in this country. The bloated budgets are too much. The pay is probably too high. And no Republican politician is going to tell you that, because I promise you, they're all like, we got to increase the budgets. We've got to increase the pay. It's not a problem of pay. You've got too many people who are too incompetent because you decided to hire Miss Susie Pants ponytail underwear and put them in positions where they have no business. It is an absolute crisis in our country of competence. It is a crisis of competence because we have gotten rid of the concept of merit and we have replaced it with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can I get an amen? I've got so many clips, so many video clips. You know how I am, a million billion clips that I have to play, and so many things that I want to talk about. A little bit of good news. Turns out that after this event, thanks to Donald Trump, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will receive Secret Service protection, which, you know, depending on how you look at it, honestly, you know, good idea, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Why not put the government that killed your dad in charge of things, right? Because as you remember from my conversation with Brandon Herrera yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. thinks the government killed his dad. So, of course, yeah, give him government protection. Yeah, fascinating stuff here. Joe Biden was asked about his comments before the shooting where he was talking about, you guys said no sound. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can get you fixed on that. My bad. There's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be. Let's see if I can get that for you. How about this? No, no sound.
But I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say
words
crosshairs. I was talking about focus on.
Let me start over again. Sorry about that, guys.
You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say
words
crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there's very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
Bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him.
Here's that clip from Secretary Mayorkas.
President, the former president, and their campaign events is one of our most vital priorities. In light of this weekend's events, the president has directed me to work with the Secret Service to provide protection to Robert Kennedy Jr. Both prior to and after the events of this past weekend, the Secret Service enhanced former President Trump's protection based on the evolving nature of threats to the former president and his imminent shift from presumptive.
Yeah, I mean, just ask yourself this. I mean, do you really feel better knowing that you're getting Secret Service protection after what we saw last weekend? Tucker Carlson speaking last night or before the Republican convention.
Trump just won. He won. Not only did he survive an assassination attempt, he stood up without knowing whether there were other shooters there. He stood up and faced the crowd and raised his hand and said, "Fight, fight, fight." That's it. You do that, you win. And by the way, I happen to notice that the crowd, which also didn't know whether there were other shooters, who watched Trump get shot in the face, they did not bolt. It wasn't like a fire in a theater, actually. They sat there, they watched him intently, and when he stood up, they applauded him, and many cried. Why is that? Because a brave leader gives his people heart. That's why. That's exactly why. So with that, Trump became president. I bet my house on it. And he defeated the Democrats. And on merit, by the way. Not through the usual political scheming. I'll trade you a Senate seat for your vote. No. He did it by being a man in a nation of people who weren't quite, just being honest. Okay? He acted like a man. The kind of.
There's Mommy asking the real questions. When we say Trump is one, are they accounting for all the cheating that will happen? Yikes. Courage. courage, people are saying, well, why would this change your vote? Because people are not used to seeing courage. That's really the difference here, is that we are so used to seeing cowardice all the time. We are so used to seeing spineless politicians. Remember on January 6th, the photographs of all of the members of Congress cowering? And there wasn't even protesters there who were coming in with guns. It wasn't like the Capitol was being stormed or there was some active shooter incident. It was members of Congress who were huddled down like children, frightened children, hiding in the seats away from their own constituents, from the people that they are meant to represent. They were terrified. For a moment, they were more scared of us than we were of them. So when Donald Trump raised his fist to the air after being shot in the face, he showed courage. And that is sorely lacking in this country of spineless twats, 5'2" with an attitude, this country of diversity, equity, and inclusion standards, of people who are cowards put into positions of authority and responsibility, not through merit, like people like J.D. Vance, who rose to power based on merit, and that's why he's there, but because people who are in this country who are in power have gotten there not through their own skills. They've gotten there through money, or like how Donald Trump said, vote trading, cynicism, nepotism. That's how this country has operated until Donald Trump came. But Trump showed courage. Biden said crosshairs. I played the clip already. Take a listen to this leftist who was asked about the event last weekend, so you can see what I'm talking about here.
You guys are out here on the heels of the attempted Trump assassination. Can I get your reaction to what happened the other day?
Well, it's a shame the person missed, but it's ironic that the shooter was also a Republican, and I am scared about political violence.
Let me tell you something about the shooter being a Republican. If you have a situation where you don't have an open primary state, if you want to vote in a primary, you have to register as a Republican. Missouri, it's an open primary. You don't have to register as a Republican. We don't have party registration, right? And that's one of the benefits of it, is that whenever some idiot goes off and does something, you don't get to say, oh, it was a Democrat or it was a Republican or it was a Libertarian, because if you have open primaries, anybody can choose to vote in which primary they want. The parties hate it, but it's good for situations like these where you have retards who are saying, well, it's interesting that the shooter was a Republican, and it's sad that they missed.
You're scared of political violence, but you were hoping that he wouldn't have missed.
Yes.
Wow.
You're scared of political violence, but you're glad that the political violence happened. This is who we're up against. Right? We're not fighting. Here's the thing. This isn't a contest of equals here. What we are fighting against is brute force. And this is the reason that Donald Trump is in the position that he's in, because people like Mitt Romney, limp dicks like Gary Johnson, representing their respective movements, conservatives and libertarians, were unable to get the jobs done. They were unable to lead their movements to at least some semblance of victory. Republicans and populists, and now Trump supporters, MAGA people, are behind Trump because Donald Trump is the warrior that we need in this time to defeat people like this, because you cannot logic someone out of a position that they didn't logic themselves into. These people will use force, they will use violence, and they will use power, and they will cheat, and they will steal, and they will manipulate, and they will backstab in order to get what they want. What is it that makes us difference between, what is it that makes the difference between us and them if we have to fight fire with fire? How can we hold to our limiting principles that give us the moral high ground over these people while still maintaining an edge, winning tactical victories, winning battles, and ultimately winning the war? This is the fight. This is the question in the Republican Party right now. And Senator J.D. Vance embodies this debate. He embodies the post-libertarian mindset of people guided by libertarian principles, but who believe that they should take control of the administrative state and use it for their own purposes against their enemies. This is the conversation we're going to have with Vance Gin in about 12 minutes. If you would like to watch today's mini documentary, and the theme of the mini documentaries this week are presidential assassinations from history, attempted and successful. If you would like to watch that mini documentary, today's is a special one, then you've got to unlock it as bonus content. For those who watch the show regularly, you probably are aware of how that works. It's simple. You either make Rumble rants, YouTube super chats, or what I recommend, you go to forlibertyshop.com, get yourself some incredible swag. During the show, if we hit $60 in sales, or if you make $60 in Rumble rants, that will unlock the bonus content so that rather than watching our commercials, which are still fun and funny, and I produce myself, it would be a lot more interesting, of course, to watch the mini documentary. So get those Rumble rant donations in now so that about 5 to 6 minutes from now, when I go to get Vance Gin on the show, you'll be able to watch the mini documentary instead of commercials. Okay? Would love to hear your thoughts about things like this. Send me a text at 573-319-1586. Send us a text again at 573-319-1586. I'd love to hear your thoughts on stories like these. And if you want to, we'd love to hear from you. Rumble Studio still absolutely killing it. They've unlocked some new features. Rumble is offering new products. When you think of the traditional pet supplements and treats, what flashes to your mind first? The gross smell, the slimy, moist texture. Let's face it, why would you feed your little family member snacks that stink and even are so terrible tasting that you wouldn't even ever think to eat it yourself? And how can it be good for them? That's why Rumble started a new company, Positive Health, PAW. It's very cute. A company founded by people who are not only fighting for free speech, but love their pets enough to make healthy, clean ingredients and great tasting superfood supplement waffles. Man, that sounds kind of good. And pet products that are human grade. Yeah, that means you could actually eat them too. I love that clip of the old lady who's like eating the cookies and she's like, "Mom, why are you eating?" She's like, "What? Aren't they for everybody?" And they're like, "They're dog treats." And she's like, no, right? You wouldn't do that if you ate Rumble's new Positive Superfood waffles that are packed with essential nutrients and minerals and vitamins that your companion needs daily to stay healthy and full of energy. Go to the site right now. Use the code STUDIO to save 15% off your subscription order. That's positive, PAWSITIVE.com/studio. Use that code STUDIO to save 15% off. And thank you to Rumble. And congratulations, Rumble, on your new company, your new venture. We wish Rumble the best. They're absolutely helping us to make it happen. Dog waffles, says Drew Van Runkle. Yes, dog waffles. And Dad Bod Baboon reminds us everyone should go to Rumble for rants, not YouTube. YouTube takes like 30% of all super chats. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for reminding us of such. We're going to speak to Vance Gin here. I'm going to go in about 5 minutes to go get him on the show. So make sure that you get those Rumble rants in soon. An old friend of mine just sent me a text message. I'm not going to say his name. He says he's been thinking about it a lot lately. I'm officially jumping on the bandwagon. I still don't think that Trump is the best option we have to offer, but he's the best option on board. Watching this week, he's made it very clear he's all about truly making America great again. My head won't be held the highest it's ever been on November 5th, but I'll be there in support of the orange. Very funny, sir. You can send us text messages too. Looks like our friend, everybody should say thank you to Nancy because she just unlocked the bonus content. Nancy, what are you doing? You're so generous. Thank you, Nancy. We appreciate you very much. Oh, she got some. She got our Die Hard sweaters. That's awesome. She's stocking, getting ready for Christmas. Now I have a machine gun Christmas sweaters. You know what I'm talking about, right? Those are going to be awesome. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you, Nancy. You get to everybody gets to watch the mini documentary today, thanks to her. And I think Quest Fanning also did some super chats. All right, back to the clips. I've got a billion clips. This is Senator J.D. Vance in a discussion at the Claremont Institute on his vision for American society. Take a listen.
I think that we should fight for the right of every American to live a good life in the country they call their own, to raise a family in dignity on a single middle-class job. It's a simple vision that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to live a good life in this country that is your own, that was built by your grandparents and parents, that will be inherited by your children. Now, it's of course more complicated in some ways than it sounds. I think that requires that we respect our history in order to give that to people, so that people are anchored in the traditions of this country, so that they can teach their children those traditions, and so they can pass off a feeling of rootedness in their own community. That's why, of course, we worry about the assault on our history in our schools. I think it requires that we give our children and ourselves the right to speak openly and participate meaningfully in this democratic society of ours. That's why we worry so much about censorship, whether it comes from the government or whether it comes from the big corporations. I think that it requires that we live and have work that has dignity and is meaningful. That's why we worry about our trade and economic policies, so that the people who do work hard and play by the rules actually have good jobs there to employ them. It's why we worry about our foreign policy, so that we don't send people to wars that have no connection to our national interest and end up depleting our country of its most useful resource, the young men and women who fight for our military. All of these things, all of the battles that we fight, as complicated as they are, affect and implicate this question of whether we're enabling the people, the citizens of this country, to live a good life in their own nation.
Some interesting comments there, and I think, I agree in theory. I think that in practice, it's something that is going to be much more difficult to achieve. And I'll be interested to hear what Vance Gin has to say about that. We are going to have him on here in a little bit less than, or actually right about 5 minutes. I'm going to go to not a commercial break. We're going to go to the bonus content. I've got so many more incredible clips and things to play for you, some funny things to play, but there's just not going to be time for all of this stuff this morning. I'm going to do my absolute best to pack everything in. Coming up next, Vance Gin, Donald Trump's economist in the Office of Management and Budget, coming up next. Then at 8 o'clock, we've got Camilia Peterson to react to all this news. Angela McCardle of the Libertarian National Committee at 8:30. It's going to be a wild show. You don't want to miss a single minute. Don't go. We'll be right back after the bonus content on the Wake Up America show.
Wake Up America show looks at presidential assassinations, both attempted and successful. Let's consider the story of the assassination of President James A. Garfield. On July 2nd, 1881, newly inaugurated President James A. Garfield was mortally wounded by a deranged gunman as he prepared to board a train in Washington, D.C. On the morning of July 2nd...
We wouldn't be doing this at some beautiful place with the gorgeous ocean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there.
On the Wake Up America could live within 75 miles of Williamsburg, provided he met regularly with his psychiatrist and social worker. This arrangement marked a significant step in his return to a more normal life.
We wouldn't be doing this at some beautiful place with the gorgeous ocean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down, see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And still I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a senator.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look.
And it's
There he
not
is.
easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're glad and thankful to have you here. I hope that you all have heard the news by now that the Wake Up America show is now growing to become part of a network. That's right. We're launching 2 brand new shows coming this fall as part of the 4 Liberty Network, starring Daniela Pensack, Brian Piotr, Jordan Marinovich. More details will be coming soon, but keep an eye on us. And thank you to Rumble and Rumble Studio for collaborating with us to make it happen. They're definitely helping us to make this something very special for you all. Thank you to all your financial support. The Wake Up America show going strong now almost 2 years. And I told you that this is what I was building towards, thanks to the financial support of viewers and listeners like yourself. And of course, thanks to Rumble, thanks to Preserve Gold, all of our sponsors, and of course, all of the purchases you made at 4 Liberty Shop. We are now building out our own Liberty Network. 2 more podcasts, and who knows what else could be coming soon. Last night, my wife and I, Stephanie, watched the movie Hillbilly Elegy. She's like, oh, I love movies like this. And frankly, she was more interested in J.D. Vance's wife's life story necessarily than J.D. Vance's herself, but it's an incredible life. He came from nothing, the poorest people in Appalachia, to now vice presidential candidate alongside Donald Trump. There's certainly a lot to respect there. But a lot of people like myself who believe in economic freedom and personal liberty have a lot of questions about J.D. Vance. And somebody just sent a text message into the line too saying, didn't he used to be a never Trumper? What's the deal with J.D. Vance? Let's talk to Vance himself. Oh, wait, a different Vance. Vance Gin joining us live this morning. What's up, Vance? How you doing, brother?
Hey, Austin, I'm doing well. Yeah, it's going to be interesting with my name and J.D. Vance and how that's going to work out.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Vance, because I know you more than anybody have a pretty good idea of what the views are of J.D. Vance in regards to his views on economics. But before we get there, I was curious because I was reading your tweet yesterday. You congratulated him. Some people were griping, but you were wishing him well, and you had nice things to say initially, despite your concerns that we'll get to in a moment. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, Austin, I mean, I think it's important for us to be able to treat people like people and say, you know what, I appreciate where you've come from. He had a troubled past with a volatile family and everything. And Hillbilly Elegy, I think, is a great book. I like the movie as well. And so there's a great story that's there. Actually, I see a lot of it in me as well, from low, humble background to go in to do something else. And now he's going to be a VP candidate for the United States, the greatest country in the world. It's pretty phenomenal. Even though I have some reservations about his economic policies and everything, it's still extraordinary what he's been able to do.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, he went from, Appalachia, that's the poorest white community of white people in the United States. Those are the people that are struggling the most. And then, his family moved to Ohio, and a lot of the manufacturing plants that his grandfather had moved to Ohio for shut down. I mean, it's kind of fascinating to see people who are from our generation. Vance, we're about the same age, as J.D. Vance, youngish guys, right about the middle part of their career. To see them writing memoirs about their life and to talk about the 1990s, some far distant past. But I can understand the tension that people like J.D. Vance and others from those communities feel because of how much the economy has changed and hollowed out those communities that were in the 1920s. You can actually see a montage in the movie of how in the 1920s, those were booming communities. Middletown, Ohio, I think. Booming communities, great jobs. People were able to take care of themselves. And now they're broke. They have no prospects. The education quality is as low as it gets in the country. You can understand why they feel economic tension, right, JD?
Yeah, that's right. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. That's all right. It's all right. I'm going to get that a lot over the next couple of...
You are, yes. JD Vance, yes.
I got to get used to it.
That's all right.
No, but you're hitting on the right things, Austin. And I mean, you also have the reservations about trade with China, the foreign trade and everything else, because there's this idea that hollowed out, right, the Rust Belt in Ohio and a lot of those manufacturing jobs. I think it's a little bit different. I think it's more of a complicated story than that, because you had a lot of technology booms. You had the automation of a lot of things. And so there was a contribution to a lot of factors that are going on, to where if you have more protectionist policies and other things that were trying to help certain people, there are going to be costs. And you and I talked about this. There are seen versus unseen things that are going on. And if you do those sort of policies, we have to figure out what's the unseen as well. And I think there's going to be a lot of costs associated with that. But I do know too, right? We've had it was also a historic weekend, right, with President Trump being shot in the ear, and what all happened with that, and hopefully for some sense of unity. And then J.D. Vance being chosen at the RNC convention yesterday. It's really interesting to see all of the things that are going on right now and what that will mean for the next 4 months before we get to the election.
So what it does mean is that J.D. Vance will no longer be a senator from Ohio. He now goes to a vice presidential position, which means that will be filled by the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, and our friend Vivek Ramaswamy, who is much more amenable to our ideas, has floated the idea that he's definitely open to taking that seat, which would mean that we'd take an economic populist out of a position of power, put them in a position of no power. And if Vivek Ramaswamy took the seat, we as libertarians would actually gain in a sense, wouldn't we?
Yeah. On net, that would be could be a positive. And so hopefully that will be the case with Governor DeWine putting Vivek Ramaswamy in there. That'd be fantastic. And so I hope that that's the case. And maybe, I don't know, for those of us who are more free market oriented, what I've been trying to figure out too, Austin, is how do we become more united? There's been so much of a discussion on the right between the NatCons, the free cons, the libertarians, and everything else, and so much vitriol that seems to go on, that I hope some of this can start to die down, because at some point we got to start to come together, because we can't have the progressive ways of the past continue into the future. I've kept asking, where is this free market fundamentalism at? I mean, Reagan did some good things, Trump did some good things, but it certainly wasn't a libertarian, a free market sort of policy approach. And so maybe there's a way for us to come together and unite around this. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Well, but Vivek would be another good position there in the Senate.
Well, I mean, I don't want to reminisce too much on my own past here. I'd like to talk more directly about J.D. Vance, but for just like 30 seconds here, I do want to state that, in 2016, one of the reasons why I ran against Gary Johnson was because I felt this wave of populism that was coming that required a more muscular leader that would be able to actually take their ideas and do battle against the left effectively. Because I saw Gary Johnson as a weak and ineffective leader for our ideas. And the Republicans saw that the same way with Mitt Romney and with John McCain, where their leadership was unable to get the job accomplished. And unfortunately, what seems to have happened, Vance, is that there is this sort of effete, almost left libertarian weakness that has infected our movement that makes us repellent to the type of people who would actually, in theory, support our ideas. And many of the people who were with us in the Tea Party years, many of the people who were supporters of our ideas now call themselves post-libertarians, Peter Thiel and many others, who the type of people who back J.D. Vance, and they've abandoned us, I think, not necessarily because they think our ideas are bankrupt, but that because libertarians have made themselves so repellent that they've decided to go another way, because we have so turned off the American people with the behavior of naked people on the stage, with the silliness of Gary Johnson and others, and we have sort of done this to ourselves in some sense. Do you kind of see what I'm talking about in some ways here?
No, I do, Austin. And I thought you brought up great points when you were running in 2016. Maybe you'll run again one day. But I think that I think you're right. I think the libertarians, and I'm more of a lowercase libertarian, to be honest with you, right? I usually vote Republican. Not sure I'm going to do that this time around. We'll see what happens. But I try to be as classically liberal as possible. And whenever I hear a lot of the discussion that's going on, even with Chase Oliver, who's running on the libertarian candidate, ticket, he's more of a left-wing libertarian, if you will. I'm pro-life. He's pro-choice. There's other things about that's going on, and so I think that we're not able to see someone. This would be a great opportunity, really, for someone on the libertarian ticket to run and have a great showing, given that the problems with Biden and even Democrats not wanting to vote for Biden, and the issues with Trump. A lot of people don't want to vote for Trump because it's Trump. This would be a great time for a third party, and it's unfortunate because, as you know, Austin, it's very difficult for a third party person to run, given the duopoly, the uniparty that's out there. It makes it very difficult. But I do think it's important for us to get our messages out there that free markets and capitalism are the best path to prosperity. That these are the ways that overcome.
But the problem is that we're, and you excuse my language here, but we're fucking nerds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not going to help us if we don't have some muscular form of libertarianism that is inspiring, right? We need you got to have a fist in the air after getting shot in the face moment.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to assassinate us. They don't have to. We're more than happy to commit to a circular firing squad. But I don't want to bitch too much about a movement that has absolutely no clout whatsoever in this election. Let's talk about what actually matters, Vance, which is JD Vance's views as a national conservative, right? As opposed to libertarian. This is a guy who says that his argument is that you should be able to, in this country, on a middle class income, be able to, in your own country, make a good living and be able to take care of your family and live a good life in your own country. We've lost the American dream. He's right about that. But he says we should take control of the administrative state, the deep state. He says that we should put conservatives and libertarians and populists into power in the government and have people like you, smart guys like you, running the show in the government, like you were there before when you worked for Donald Trump in 2016. If we just had people like you, the smartest guys in the room, Vance, that would solve the problems, wouldn't it?
No. I do agree. But Austin, I agree that we do need to reduce and remove the fourth branch of government and the regulatory state. It's overpowering. The bureaucracy is there. A lot of the career staff are leftists, and they don't want to run a lot of the stuff that, even when I was in the Trump White House, they didn't want to run a lot of stuff that we were doing. And so there was a lot of tension that was building along the way. And it's because government's too large. And the part of the NatCons and JD Vances of the world seem to want to do is to grow government in their direction and have people in power that can make those decisions. But the problem is that even the people in power like me, and being an expert, and I was chief economist of the Office of Management and Budget, I still have limited knowledge. I still have the Hayekian problem of the knowledge problem, to where I can't come in and mechanically design what should happen in the economy. That's got to happen through people from the bottom up. And to me, this is too much from the top down, just like progressivism has been for a long time, whether it's protectionism, whether it be the union power. We saw the Teamsters guy speak last night as well. There's a lot of top down approach that I don't think is a good direction for the country and hasn't worked well whenever it's been tried in the past.
One of the things that people are touting about JD Vance is his age. He will be the first millennial, someone of our generation, who will be on a major party ticket. And in an election where everybody's talking about how old the presidential candidates are, this is clearly a benefit, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's good to have a voice out there. I think he's 39. He was born in 84. I was born in 81, so I'm 42. So, I think that I'm right at the edge. I think you are too, right around there. And so I think from that perspective, it is good to have someone else that's a younger voice, get them out there, see what's going on, because the age of Biden and Trump being around 80 just doesn't appeal or doesn't reflect a lot of what's going on across the country. And at some point, we've got to say, you know what, it's time for the next crew to come through. We're not going to have that at the top of the presidential race at this point. So a VP candidate looks good in that situation. So I do think that there are some positives, like we started off this discussion. And as I mentioned in my post on X, is that I do think there are some positive things about JD Vance. I don't want to give the impression that I don't like him at all. I just think from a policy perspective, there's a lot of differences that I have with him.
One of the things, and I know this is probably not the kind of thing that you necessarily overly concern yourself with, but a lot of people are concerned about, is the sort of about face on Donald Trump that he did. He did call him Hitler. He did, say that he was an authoritarian, and he said he was a never Trumper and all this. And now he's the biggest MAGA guy that there is out there. I've changed my mind about Trump since 2016. Obviously, I tried to run against him in 2016. Now I became a delegate for him in Missouri. The reason why I was able to make that kind of a transition is because Donald Trump campaigned on things like universal health care. And I was like, oh my God, this is definitely not what we want. But when he got in office, his behavior in office was actually quite different. He hired guys like you. He passed the First Step Act. I mean, tell us from your experience in the Trump White House, or at least working, in the administration, Office of Management and Budget, correct?
Yes.
Tell us your experience there. I mean, you are like me. You're a libertarian. You're an economist. You believe in free markets and free trade. Trump clearly hired you and put you in a position of authority as an economist. I mean, like, were you as surprised as anybody that when he, the way that he handled his presidency versus how he campaigned?
I was, definitely. And I was in the executive office building. So I was on the White House complex, go in the West Wing anytime I wanted and go to the Navy mess and eat or whatever I wanted to do. And so it was an extraordinary experience that I had there. And it was quite interesting to see how he ran, like you said, in 2016 and the actions that were taken. And it's one reason why even in 2016, I wasn't a huge fan of Trump, but I did vote for him in 2020, given the policies that were put in place. And the people that I saw in a lot of those positions were really trying to advance freedom and prosperity and liberty across the country. There were some things that I definitely disagreed with people on, like Peter Navarro and Robert Lighthizer on the protectionism and tariffs and other things. And I had a different approach to immigration. I thought we needed more immigrants to be here. We need to reform our system instead of just building a wall. But if you think about the deregulation that took place, the American Action Forum with Douglas Holtz-Eakin, they put out these numbers where they track final cost of rules that have been passed. And under Trump, up to this point, 3+ years into his presidency, there was a declining of about $100 billion worth of cost. Under Biden, it's $1.7 trillion increase in regulations. That's just like a tax cut in addition to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And so you saw a lot more of government getting out of the way, letting the markets work. And I'm hopeful that we'll see that again. I'm a little hesitant still, right, Austin, and I'm going to be pushing back on this on X and my writings and research that I do on protectionism. And we need to do something about immigration and spending. The spending part was something that we couldn't get the president to be fired up about, right? We at OMB Russ Vogt was the director at the time. We were writing a lot of good stuff, and our budgets were trying to find savings over time. But the fiscal situation that we're in is a dire situation. The economic situation is a dire situation. We've got to unleash the economy and get government out of the way, and we'll have a more robust economy. And maybe that's what will happen. I hope that's the case, because if not, we're going to be in a world of hurt.
It's interesting when you look at the way that Donald Trump governed. It was such a different candidate than what we thought we were going to get. And when it comes to changing your mind on Donald Trump, the question of immigration, I agree with you mostly on the immigration question. I do think we have a problem when it comes to national security on our border. We should have a secure border. But I think the fascinating thing about Donald Trump, and I really think this is where a lot of the benefit comes, not just from having Supreme Court picks, but a lot of the benefit comes from the fact that Donald Trump's, just by claiming that he will enforce the law, was enough to make immigrants, potential illegals, turn around and go back, decide to be, because just simply knowing that you will have an administration that believes in law and order and will enforce the law was enough to change people's minds about coming here illegally. And to me, I think that in itself is a strong enough deterrent. Who knows if we'll ever be able to build a full wall on the southern border, because quite frankly, the president's not a dictator. He can't get everything that he wants. And there's too many roadblocks to it, which is why it's kind of a joke when they say he's going to become an authoritarian and do everything that he wants. Basically, every institution in the government and every media institution and every nonprofit institution almost are united against him in this country. I mean, FDR had almost every institution, every media outlet, every branch of the government all working in his favor, and he still wasn't able to completely get everything that he wanted in packing the courts or, getting his New Deal and things like that. So I don't have any kind of fear of that with Donald Trump. But our last thing here, Vince, I guess, is what do you expect to see? I mean, I imagine Donald Trump will be reelected, probably getting shot. Did that. We don't know. We don't know what shenanigans might happen in the ballot box. But what do you think Donald Trump, J.D. Vance administration looks like? Is it because second terms are usually very different? Because now that they don't have to worry about re-election, he can kind of do more of what he wants without that fear. Do you think that Donald Trump governs quite differently in the second term than he does in the first? I mean, he's such a wild card. What do you think, Vance?
Well, we'll see. I think that there will be the deregulations will be on the table. I think he's going to want to extend the Trump tax cuts, because if he didn't do that, all of us would get tax hikes. We would see tax hikes, and so that would be bad for the economy. So I think that's going to be a big part of it. They've already kind of said Social Security and Medicare are off the table again. I was kind of hoping that those would have some key reforms that they would put forward. That's something we've got to tackle. One of the things that I will say, too, that's really good about J.D. Vance is, in my view, his approach to the Ukraine situation of just not just throwing more money at the problem, and also foreign wars. I mean, he has been, against foreign wars, just like Trump. And so I think from our more libertarian streaks than us, I think that's also a good sign of pushing back. And your point about having some strength and a rule of law at home is also really important. To me, as a classical liberal, rule of law is very important. If you're not going to go by the rules that we have here, we cease to be a country at some point. And so we've got to make sure we have the rule of law. And when we're thinking about other countries and everything else, we've got to get our own house in order. Going back to Ron Paul, right? I'm not an isolationist or anything, but I think we do need to get our own fiscal, economic house in order before we start trying to go run the world in other places. And so though that could also be a positive compared to the destruction that Biden has made along the southern border and across the globe, with so many issues and so many problems that he's made across the globe.
So Vance, any chance that you will be tapped again to go back to work for the White House in the second term?
We'll see. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, but it's always a pleasure to serve Americans and get back in there. So we'll see what happens. But I'm interested to see, what the policies are going to be. Let's make sure that we have pro-growth economic policies that's going to let people prosper.
Sounds good, Vance. Anything else you want to share with our listeners or plug before we let you go today?
Yeah, Austin, you can go check me out at vancegin.com. Check out my podcast, Let People Prosper. I work for a lot of think tanks across the country. And so just go and check me out. But it's always a pleasure to be with you, Austin. And I'm excited about your new shows that are coming up. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. There'll be more news on that very soon, Vance. We appreciate you very much. And sorry that you're going to have to be called J.D. Vance for the next 4 years, okay? Have a good one, right. Vance. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
That is Vance Gin. We appreciate him from Let People Prosper. He's got his own podcast as well you might want to check out. And, of course, he did serve in Donald Trump's White House in the Office of Management and Budget in his first term. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the interview we just had with Vance Gin. Send us a text. Do you have a question about J.D. Vance, the vice presidential pick for Donald Trump? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open, and you can send us a text at 573-319-1586. Boy, Rumble is really killing it. They've launched a whole slew of new brands. Rumble Studio is really making our life incredible over here. They want to help make your life better too. Who's in control of America's nukes? Question mark. Is it Biden? Meanwhile, we've got Russian ships off the coast of Florida and full-blown wars in Ukraine and Israel. The world is at its most unstable since World War II, except now with nuclear weapons, the stakes are 10 times higher. How do people like you and I stay safe? Well, every prepper needs to have Radio Guard A's, the only FDA-approved drug to treat radioactive fallout. Only the feds have it until now. That's why I partnered with 5G Free, the only company in the world that has a supply of Radio Guard A's and the ability to prescribe it prophylactically. Get their radiation emergency kit with Radio Guard A's, potassium iodide, Zofran, and a Geiger counter. That's awesome. There's simply no other tool in your arsenal to protect against a radioactive threat. Go to 5, that's the number 5, G, the letter G, free, FREE.com/studio, and use code STUDIO to save 10%. I have a radiation kit, and so should you. That's 5gfree.com/studio. Use that code STUDIO. There you go. And thank you very much to Rumble Studio. And congratulations on all these amazing new live reads you got going on here. AP killing it for the win. We're going to speak to Camilia Peterson here in a little bit less than 10 minutes. I'm excited about that. If you have a question and you want to send a text, please do so. Don't forget to click that like button if you're enjoying the content this morning. I know many of you are probably watching us for the very first time, so do click the follow button as well so you can find us again. The show is live Mondays through Fridays from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. This tweet from Marianne Williamson yesterday made me laugh. She's talking about J.D. Vance. Here's what she said. J.D. Vance is Trump's choice for VP. His views on women are particularly interesting. Here's his quote. J.D. Vance says, "We are effectively run in this country by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too." Based in Redfield, that's Marianne Williamson talking about J.D. Vance. Here's J.D. Vance talking about Ukraine.
I think it's ridiculous that we're focused on this border in Ukraine. I got to be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
Based in Red Pill, doesn't want to spend our money on a war in Europe that has nothing to do with us. But on the little bit less space, a little bit less red pilled, here he is talking about taking over the administrative state, like I was saying earlier.
I tend to think that we should seize the institutions of the left and turn them against the left, right? We need like a de-Bathification program, but like a de-wokeification program in the United States, right? So like, let me give you a couple examples. So one of the things I've always been very sympathetic to is this.
This is kind of like that moment from Lord of the Rings where he's like the ring of power and he's like, throw it into the fire, throw it into the fire. And he's like, no, right? You know, it's like, I was hoping that Vivek Ramaswamy was going to be like our Frodo and be able to throw it into the fire, but not yet. The hearts of men will be corrupted by the ring of power because I promise you Republicans will not be any better at effectively managing government than Democrats.
The idea that we don't have a real constitutional republic anymore. What we have is an administrative state, right?
Yes.
The administrative state controls everything, right? So to the point that like when Donald Trump wins, he can't even sometimes get his people in core positions of authority in the administrative state. It's like, well, do we have a constitutional republic? The founding fathers actually created a very powerful chief executive, a very powerful president. But if he can't even fire the people in his own administration, like, is this really a successful republic? So a lot of conservatives have said we should deconstruct the administrative state. We should basically eliminate the administrative state.
Yes.
And I'm sympathetic to that project. But another option is that we should just seize the administrative state for our own purposes.
See, there you are. That's that post-libertarian mindset there, that he's sympathetic to the ideas of Ron Paul and Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek and Vivek Ramaswamy and people like myself, right? He's sympathetic to our ideas, but if we can't do it, then better to control it. Man, it's a difficult question and one that we're not going to be able to answer just now, but maybe Camilia Peterson can. We haven't talked to her since the assassination attempt. Let's talk to her about that. Let's talk to her about J.D. Vance. Let's talk to her about all of the goings on in the world of liberty when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
On the Wake Up America, he could live within 75 miles of Williamsburg, provided he met regularly with his psychiatrist and social worker. This arrangement marked a significant step in his return to a more normal life.
We wouldn't be doing this. I'd be at some beautiful place with a gorgeous ocean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down. You see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And son, I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a senator.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look.
And it's
There he
not
is.
easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Click that like button. If you've been enjoying today's show, We'd love to have you be a regular guest. It's Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time, a 2-hour tour de force of economic freedom and personal liberty, all the news that you can use, and maybe some that you can't. Sometimes we like to goof around, especially with my next guest, who's a Tuesday and Thursday regular, Camilia Peterson, joining us live this morning. Good morning, CJ. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Nice to have you here. A lot has happened since the last time you were on the show, Camilia. Other than that, Mrs. Trump, how was the rally? You know what I mean?
Right. What a time to be alive. Oh, my goodness.
Camilia, your reaction to the events of the weekend.
Yeah, incredible. So I was out knocking doors whenever that happened. And I can't remember. Okay. So I saw a notification pop up from a group chat and said something about being careful about what posting online or something like that. And I was like, something's happened. And so I went and looked and we decided very shortly thereafter to stop knocking doors for the candidate that I was knocking for, just kind of out of an abundance of caution.
Wow.
So, and so we were watching, went back and just watched everything as it was unfolding, on television. And it just is, at the time you're just speechless. And the more that has come out, how the sheer incompetence, at best, has happened. And, the thing is at the time, I don't care if you hate Donald Trump, love Donald Trump, whatever, there is nothing negative that you could say about how he responded in that moment. And people have been talking about how he seems emotional as he came into the RNC convention last night, and kind of wondering how will this affect him, because if you think about it, it's not just that he narrowly missed losing his own life, but another man lost his life because of him. And the weight of that has to be tremendous. It just really has to add to the impact of the whole thing. So I think that how he responded in the moment, and how, that what he did for the American people in that response was priceless. I don't think that you could have done it any better.
How did you feel personally, Camilia, when you saw the video for the first time of him pumping his fist in the air after he had been shot?
I think it was just, a sense of, you have that sense of pride, that sense of, relief, that, I don't know, there is that sense of national pride, right?
Really?
Yes. And it doesn't matter who it is.
Camilia, you can say it, let it all out.
I hope that
let the love for Donald Trump, let the love for Donald Trump flow out of you.
No, I really hope that we would feel that way no matter who was there. But I think that, Donald Trump has been a man of the people. I would never, deny that. Do I like how he's done everything? No, of course not. That doesn't change anything. But I love how he responded in the moment. And I love how he refused to let them keep him down, his security, right? I know everybody was like, oh, look at them, they're leaving him exposed. He did not give them a choice. He was like, get out of my way. I'm gonna
but in theory, they should have been able to overpower him from doing so. But there was one Secret Service agent
yes.
who seemed incapable of overpowering him, because she was nowhere near as tall or as big as he was, which leads me to my next question. How did you as a woman feel about watching that female Secret Service agent fumbling and bumbling her way through that incident?
I think that just is the epitome of where we are culturally in how we've responded to all of this political correctness and feminism and all of these cultural issues that we have in very real time here, when the life of someone is at stake, impacted the safety of the former president, because we are so careful to make sure include everyone, no matter their actual physical qualifications for the job. So yeah,
Camilia, I had a conversation yesterday with a police sergeant lady talking a little bit about that situation. She was against DEI, but she's for females in those situations, or she's for them if they can meet the standards.
right.
But I guess the challenge here is, what are we really talking about here? Like female freaks of nature, that like just women who just happen to be massive or gigantic, or suffer from some kind of a hormone imbalance that makes it so that they're actually like 6'5" and jacked, or maybe they've been taking steroids their whole life, and we'll put them in that situation. Or or should we? Isn't this supposed to be us relying on an abundance of caution? And aren't we as conservatives and libertarians supposed to be accepting biological realities? Because it seems like there's still many conservatives and many libertarians who talk a big game about being against feminism and DEI, but when the rubber hits the road, they still want to put women in between a bullet and a man.
Yes, and I would say you have to have the actual physical criteria for a job like that. And it's not just physical criteria. I mean, you've got to have the response time. Like you have to have the, if you are somebody who just does not react quickly, your, hand-eye coordination is not fantastic. Like you're not going to be a good fit for that particular job. And that would apply to men and women, because there are lots and lots of men out there who are not going to qualify for that either. So I don't know, though. We can talk about the differences in how some men and women react, but I think if we have a robust criteria that any individual has to meet for a position, and you're not cutting anybody slack because of their gender or anything else, then you will have qualified people doing that job. Because it's, yes, differences between men and women, but there are men who would not meet those qualifications too.
Certainly, but it's still sort of avoiding the point here that we're taking women and asking them to take a bullet for a man. Sounds a little misogynist, putting women in that kind of a situation or scenario. Say, yeah, you need to go and die for a man. It's certainly not traditionally conservative in any way.
No, and I actually agree with that, but that does mean that if we are going to get into that realm and start applying that, then we have to do that across the board, right? I'm fine with no women being in combat roles in the military. In fact, I think they should not be. I think it puts men in a very difficult position. But I also think that, you have to apply that in culturally as well, those expectations. And I would love to see us go back to that. I think men have a hard time with it right now because they kind of want to punish women for feminism.
Yeah, to some extent, I completely understand that. Let's talk about Senator J.D. Vance. Stephanie and I watched his movie Hillbilly Elegy last night. Quite an inspiring backstory. But I know that you, like so many others in our movement, including myself, are kind of triggered by the NatCon vibe that we get there, which is this idea that we can take control of the administrative state and use it for our own purposes. He did say that he is sympathetic to the idea that we should do away with the administrative state, but he's more, he's more Pat Buchanan than Javier Milei, you might say.
For sure. And when people write about this, you will see that analogy all of the time, that the time of the Reaganites are gone and it's time for the Buchananites, right? That's been my problem with J.D. Vance for a long time now. And I know you talked with Vance a little bit about it as well. And, J.D. Vance used to be a never Trumper, right? However, he came around on that. That's fine. People change. That's okay. What I've never liked is that he's really kind of been like peas in a pod with our own Senator Josh Hawley in terms of when he talks about things like free speech. He's not talking just about like free speech in terms of the government not censoring you. He's saying that we will tell private businesses what they can and can't do, in their businesses or on their online platforms, and use, 2A as the reasoning for that. And also this idea that, government has to go after big tech when government is actually the problem with big tech. And it's this continuing trend that pushes back against free market capitalism on the right. And it is concerning because we see that, he likes unions, right? He's a Teamsters guy, and the head of the Teamsters spoke at the RNC convention last night, and it's super concerning. There's nothing wrong, and I think that people get the idea that if you're opposed to getting in bed with the Teamsters or the unions, that you don't like people who work for unions or in unions. And I think that that's not true. Unions have historically served, a good purpose, right? They started out that way. But now, when it comes to the point where you don't have the choice in going to work for a place, and you don't have a choice in your money not going to that union, who then turn around and fund all of the Democratic causes for things that are, antithetical to your own principles. That's a problem, and it's concerning that we're seeing this trend on the right now.
Right. Well, of course, but it's sort of an outgrowth of the America's culture wars, because as the Republican Party has gone away from country club Mitt Romney style conservatism, it's become a more blue collar working class party of the people, right? The populist movement. And so it was sort of inevitable that we would see politicians taking advantage of that, right? Senators like ones that we know jumping on board that message in order to advance their own careers. Not because, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if neocons and George W. Bush style people were still in power, and that's where the political winds were swaying, then many of the senators that we know and you're thinking about right now would be George Bush neocons, if that's what was in power. If it, they're going to be going wherever the political winds are swaying. They don't have any fundamental ideological beliefs other than advancing their own careers. I think that definitely doesn't apply to some. And you see, what I've really been impressed with, and I do want to say briefly and mention this, that J.D. Vance is good on foreign policy, which is a very big, important thing.
Agreed.
Right. And it's something that we have to advance. But I've been really impressed with Vivek Ramaswamy, especially his appearance at the National Conservative Conference last week, where he went to their faces, the populists, the NatCons, and told them directly to their faces, you're wrong. We need to follow what Javier Milei is doing of Argentina. We need to abolish the administrative state. We have to if we want to make America great again, we have to make America afuera again. So on one side of things, we get a good foreign policy out of many of these economic populists. Sadly, because many of them are truly isolationists in that they're against foreign trade and for tariffs and all that stuff. But at least good that they're trying to prevent World War III. But we do have some heroes out there who still fight for our cause.
For sure. And I do think what we see on the right currently is this hypocrisy of authoritarianism, right? Because that's really what all of this boils down to is everybody likes the power as long as they can use it for their own benefit, because people are self-interested, right? And, this it's the idea that when you talk about country club Republicans, we used to be the party of big businesses, small businesses too, but all business, right? But we didn't villainize wealthy people. And we've sort of, the pendulum has swung the other way, and now it's not uncommon at all to hear people on our side villainize millionaires and billionaires if they're not doing exactly what we want them to do. But never mind, what Elon Musk has done. He's good,
right.
But no, but as far as Vivek, I am so grateful for what he's done, and all of the people that gripe about him and still say, "Oh, that he's
he's a
plant
grifter,"
and,
blah,
right?"
blah, blah,
I mean,
yeah.
whatever. There's just been too much consistency for too long now, and in situations like you just mentioned, for me to believe that's the case. However, I do think that it will be it's a test in my book for Trump to see what he does with Vivek Ramaswamy, because there has been no one in the course of this campaign who has been more loyal to him than Vivek Ramaswamy. And people talk about Trump and loyalty and how he demands loyalty, but I will tell you that Trump has been one of the most disloyal people that I've seen, and that he does tend to throw those people under the bus. And so I really want to see what he does with Vivek.
God, I can't wait to see what happens with Vivek. I mean, he's talking about that Senate seat to take over JD's Senate seat. That'd be amazing,
Yeah.
right? That would be the best case scenario in all of this. But if he doesn't, then I hope that he has some position, at least in the Trump administration, where he can do a lot of good. I just saw an incredible idea from our friend Will Run Riot, a fellow Southwestern Missouri gentleman, who says that AP really needs a Pee Wee's Playhouse word of the day type reaction anytime anyone says afuera on the show. Okay, well, you know what? You want it, you got it. Now, whenever someone says the word afuera, everybody has to scream at the top of their lungs. So there you go. If you say the secret word on the show, everybody has to scream. Type the scream in the chat, okay? And scream wherever you are at home.
I loved that Javier Milei was one of the first to respond after the assassination attempt. Yeah.
We got to be real here. I'm trying to tell my fellow libertarians, they're like, oh, no, this changes nothing. You know, like they're so you know why they're uninspired? Because they're uninspiring. I see them criticizing Donald Trump. They're like, this behavior. Oh, you're stupid if you were motivated by how Donald Trump reacted. It's like, do you not have a soul? I'm sorry. Like, can you please just and die? Like, what is wrong with our ideological fellow travelers? They are so out of touch with what's going on in the world, and there's no heart, there's no emotion. It's no wonder that libertarians lose every damn election. I despise them. I wouldn't want to be around them, much less have them in charge of anything. I wouldn't vote for a libertarian for dog catcher, Camilia, because these people have no concept of anyone but themselves. They are so individualistic that they are isolated from the rest of the world. Some of them are on drugs, some of them are feds, and some, I assume, are good people. Yes.
There are a few of those, right? But no, it is this. It's another set of extremes, right? You know, they push back so hard against being the mainstream politician worshiping types that they're contrarians all of the time, instead of having any balance to their perspective on people, with a few exceptions. Like there is some hero worship in the libertarian realm as well.
Oh,
but
yeah, there's a lot of circle jerking that goes on too. Yes.
Right. But I think that, you know, one of the things that really, when I was watching the constant replays of the shooting on television, that struck me and really moved me, was how that when they took Trump down and covered him with their bodies, and they're getting ready to stand back up and they're coordinating that effort, right? Like, just the picture of those men and women surrounding him and covering every inch of his body with their bodies, like that's, you know, that takes a whole different level. So I know that they've got, you know, body armor on and things like that, but your head's exposed, right? I mean, you are still at risk, and the willingness to put your life on the line for somebody else like that, that's moving to me. That was really neat.
Yeah, I loved it. Camilia, is there anything else that you want to share or plug before we let you go today?
Well, I think we're in interesting times, and I know the tendency for a lot of people right now is, I mean, yes, we are in kind of the hype of the moment, and the euphoria sort of that comes after an event like this. I think it is unpredictable what will happen from here. I hope that this makes Trump even better. I think that he's kind of been on the right road. I hope this makes him even better. But I do hope also that even with this, that we can just like calm down with worshiping and villainizing our politicians, because it's like we have to stop that.
Yeah, well, probably not going to happen. Camilia, great interview today. Thanks for coming on here, and we appreciate all your POVs on this one. And thanks for being a voice of reason here in the state of Missouri. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you Thursday.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much. Yes. Now we have a secret word. Yes. So everybody get ready for whenever you hear the secret word from here on out. That means that we all have to have our Pee Wee Herman moment. Does everybody know what the secret word is? What is the secret word? Is it Ajax? Is it Alabama? Is it Alabaster? Is it afraid? Or is it something else? You're just going to have to wait to find out if I say it again. Drew Van Runkle, it doesn't count if you type it in the chat, but you still have to scream in the chat whenever we hear the secret word. Angela McCardle is the chair of the Libertarian National Convention. She is going to come on here in about 10 minutes to talk about her response to the events over the weekend and what she thinks about Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio becoming the vice presidential pick. This video made me laugh yesterday. The Donald Trump appearing at the Republican National Convention for the kickoff, looking all smiles after he had been shot in the face. Take a look.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Great pleasure to see President Donald Trump safe. And if I may, before the benediction, give you this promise. You're going to be so blessed. You're going to be tired of being blessed. I guarantee it.
You gotta give it to the priest for getting up there and having the guts to do that. Speaking of guts, Donald Trump Jr. was confronted by DNC on the floor of the convention yesterday.
I think you do everyone in the country a big favor.
I know immigration's important to him. I covered the family separation crisis closely. Will we continue to see policies like separating 5,000 children deliberately from their parents?
You mean the Obama administration?
You know they didn't do that, sir.
Okay, sure.
Will there be a second family separation policy?
It's MSDNC, so I expect nothing less from you clowns. Even today, even 48 hours later, you couldn't wait. You couldn't wait with your lies and with your nonsense. So just get out of here.
The nomination continues here in the Florida delegation. We're about to hear from Eric and Don Jr.
Jacob Sobroff.
Get out of here. MSDNC. You love to see it. Hilarious. Van Jones of CNN had this to say about the rapper and OnlyFans star Amber Rose's speech at the convention. Take a listen.
And then I called a friend of mine and I said, do you know who this is? And they didn't know. Also a political person. But that's the point. They have put someone on the stage who reaches into this whole group of Americans who are not necessarily engaged at all in our politics or in our civics. These kinds of voices, I heard some grousing about this from some of the conservative. This is how you change the composition of the electorate.
Yeah, that was probably the most dangerous speak for the Democratic coalition. That is a young woman of color. She's describing the experience a lot of people have, feeling that maybe if you're around too many liberals, you might get criticized too much, or you might not be able to speak your mind. And she spoke to it really well. And she's way more famous than any of us up here. Yeah. I'm going to tell you that, way more famous. And so to the extent that these guys are trying to bust up our coalition, that was a bunker buster right there.
By the way, and it's one of the things we've been talking about, but there are speakers who speak.
The conservatives were really mad about this Amber Rose chick coming up on stage. They don't know who she is. They only know that, she's like called herself a proud slut in the past. She's got a tattoo on her forehead, right? So it's like the old conservative guard of the party is not happy with this Amber Rose speech, but the Democrats are like, that was a buster bomb against us, a young woman of color who's more famous than any of us. That is a direct attack on us. See, Donald Trump is smart. These conservatives don't quite understand his strategy, but his strategy here is strong, pimp hand strong.
Room, and there are speakers who speak through the television screen. She speaks through the camera to the audience at home. She's effective in the room, but when you're yelling into the room, that is not communicating directly through the lens.
This person is super talented. Okay, like this person knows how to speak plainly and directly, knows how to use the camera, the cadence of it. They got something there.
Yeah, and it really is hard. In those big arenas, it's hard not to want to fill up the room. If you want to scream, just make sure the grandma in the back can hear you. But you're not talking to the 30,000 people there. You're talking to the 30 million people at home. And she was the most effective. You can...
Talking about Amber Rose there on CNN. They sound afraid. Senator Rand Paul gave a congratulations to J.D. Vance, tweeting, Congrats to my friend and colleague, J.D. Vance. It's great to have an opponent of endless wars and more aid to Ukraine on the ticket. Nice. Although not all libertarians like Rand Paul were necessarily pleased from this clip of Dave Benner that was posted below that tweet.
This is pretty simple, and it's pretty obvious. The United States Senate would pass aid, much needed aid to Israel today. At this very moment, aid the House has already passed. It could go to the president's signature this afternoon if my Democratic colleagues would stand down, but they won't. Many of them here are gathered to push back against our very common sense proposal to offer support to one of our most important allies as they face an existential threat. And it's important for us to be honest about that fact, to acknowledge that Israel would be getting support from this government tomorrow if our Democratic friends didn't stop it today. Now, why are they doing this? You will hear over the next hour or so, we'll hear a lot of slogans, but very little real discussion about our policy in Ukraine or our
Senator J.D. Vance also said in an interview he sees a clear need for measures to boost participation. He says he likes the idea of a national service, and he's not talking about in wartime. He said calling for more Americans to put some skin in the game. Wonder what your thoughts are on that. You can send a text to the show at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open, and I'd love to hear your thoughts at 573-319-1586 here on the Wake Up America show. We are going to have another guest joining us here in just a few minutes. You don't want to miss Angela McArdle from the Libertarian National Committee. She's going to come on here and talk to us a little bit about her thoughts on J.D. Vance and on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump last weekend. So let's go ahead and get Angela on the show. We'll be right back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
On the Wake Up America show.